Alright, time for another DraftPhysics.com video presentation. So I'll just do some comments, I guess, because nothing else has evolved in the conversation. I mean, no one's saying anything of noteworthy, frankly. And so, yeah. So, thoughts on the Ian Gosling guy. Okay, so this is my critique. So he does the experiment, with this device that's supposed to measure the distance, and it's really easy to understand how the device has a flaw in that it can push the little detector and the detector can move further than it's supposed to, and then he proves that the detector is okay by doing another experiment where he doesn't show the original experiment. In a sense, there's only 4 things he has to do. Drop the heavy mass from 10 centimeters, then drop the light mass from 10 centimeters, then drop the heavy mass from 40 centimeters, then drop the light mass from 40 centimeters. Not very complicated. I only could make it 5, 5 centimeters and 20. You could do it in various ways to really demonstrate the point, to make the point. And instead he doesn't. So you can't really check one to the other. So the fact that in the second experiment he got results that would be consistent, that is, twice the velocity is twice the weight. He's saying twice the mass isn't twice the weight. That's the argument, that somehow the mass portion is where all this fluctuation comes in, all this kinetic energy stuff happens. So he's basically saying momentum is absolute nonsense and doesn't mean a damn thing. So it's clearly he is stating that there is no conservation of momentum. And that's why the numbers don't match at all. So, I tried to do the figuring, there's a bunch of little figures over here, blah, 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 blah. Tried to make sense out of it in terms of the, 4 times the distance, twice the velocity. Try to come up with some number that would fit for both of the numbers he provided, and it doesn't fit, frankly. Just can't make it fit. He's basically saying that some things fall differently than other things fall in gravity. They'd have to be going different speeds based on the gravitational force. Anyway, regardless, there's lots of things to doubt. I mean, using a string, that's not great. Probably should be a wire or something less likely to stretch. And the very fact that he doesn't feel like doing numerous versions of this. I mean, it doesn't, like I said, how much work is it once you've got the setup? How much work is it to actually drop it from a couple of different locations and see and get the actual data, and then we could all know exactly how weight changes with distance and gravity. We'd see if there was any coherent relationship between how far you fall in gravity and how much you weigh, because he's basically saying there is no coherent relationship, and somehow it's not because velocity is broken, but somehow masses gain more energy somehow in some non-consistent manner. Alright, so anyway, so none of his cronies are at all interested in that information, clearly. They're not saying, I want to see more. Well, to be fair, the JG guy says, have you done some control readings, just weighing the hooked mass on the new scale? So yeah, he weighed it in pounds, and so he could have just showed us what it weighs when it's just hanging on the string, to verify that those 2 readings match, because frankly they should, to some degree anyway. One's measuring in kilograms, one's measuring pounds, but you should be able to do the conversion easy enough, and that wouldn't hurt. It would also wouldn't hurt to put a weight on the string when you show us the 0 point. Okay, just showing us that, when the string is fully stretched, that's where it actually ends up. Just little things that do make a difference. And instead he spends 9 minutes trying to justify a tool that he won't show us actually performing the task of making accurate measurements. So that's another video he could do, is he could just put the camera on the scale and drop the weight, and it should be to some extent viewable, to see that the plunger is actually measuring the maximum compression of the spring. But he didn't bother with that either. Alright, so in that context, there's a couple of just funny comments. This Piro one, he must, frankly, he does drink. Nice. It occurred to me that the maximum spring compression is measuring the energy. I just, how can somebody be this stupid? I mean, obviously when something hits the ground, it's measuring the energy, you know. I mean, any idiot could figure this out, right? Pressure is energy. So, yeah. And it just occurred to him. Oh. And that's what you showed. Notice. I don't know what this notice means. So, yeah, who knows? Just drivel. I mean, just a drivel comment. I mean, the subject of the video is whether you can use a pushing slider to record a distance, and whether that's a little dangerous in the sense that there's every opportunity for your little slider to gain momentum and move further than it's supposed to. So nobody debunked the idea that the slider can't move further than it's supposed to. Nobody suggested that that can't happen. Alright. Oh, look, he replied to his own comment. My wondering about showing the force of impact is still true. What the hell is this? My wonder... I mean, you can't even figure out what he's saying. My wondering about it showing the force of impact is still true. The number is not the force of impact, it's the kinetic energy. So somehow the kinetic energy isn't the force of the impact. I mean, where does this end? This absolute mush. How could anybody believe that you can say something like the kinetic energy isn't really force related and it's not really energy, it's, you know, some sort of vaporous soul thing or something, or what is it, a spirit? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense at all. Alright, so the end is here, the loser says, of course. So again, alright, so now I've made 9 videos under 5 minutes each, you know, describing all of the paradoxical realities out there that make it pretty unviable to believe in kinetic energy, and yet he says the end is here. Not even close. I mean, not a single response to any of those videos. Nobody else will draw a lever and show how it doesn't conserve momentum. No one will take a gear and show how it doesn't conserve momentum. Nobody will demonstrate any of that. Thank you. I've been wanting to say that so bad and waiting for someone else first. Well, no, what we're going to wait for is somebody better than you, okay? Somebody more credible than you conniver and schemer, to actually do the experiment. Because, frankly, there's nothing about you that seems interested in the truth. Alright. Yay, you are the man. P.S. Nobody told Gary. Whatever that even means. I'm just saying this experiment is so bad. It's got obvious, detectable, noticeable, you know, he even compares himself to Colombo. Little defects in the evidence that, you know, Colombo would certainly see. Okay, I mean, Colombo could figure out that the little scale reader maybe ain't doing the trick. Colombo could figure out that maybe strings stretch. I mean, you're such an asshole. I mean, just such an asshole. All right. So the JG guy says, have you done some control readings, just weighing the hooked masses on the Salter scale without dropping them? In theory, the readings might noticeably change between experiments. Well, even if they noticeably change between experiments, I don't think it's going to be enough to screw them as far as there's been screwed, so that could possibly be the difference. And he's just already admitted he adjusted the scale for the second experiments. He zeroed it. Now, what he didn't admit is he might have changed that little slider thing and made it a little stiffer. So maybe it actually works now. And so, you know, but he didn't repeat the experiment with this new configuration. Even though it only would have taken, what, you know, 83 seconds? Okay, that's all going beyond, so this is his response. So this is all you really need to hear. That's all going beyond the basic demo. Okay, so these are all demos for him, and they're only for one purpose. Okay, I wanted to do. See, he's not curious about the relationship between falling distance and weight. To him, that's not an interesting subject. He couldn't care less. All right, where I think the rest of us, you know, people interested in physics, would really like, you'd all really like to know, right? Is there a speed you can go where I can take any weight and I can move it at that speed and it'll compress the scale reading its own weight? Now to me, that's a fascinating concept. I mean, never mentioned in any physics lecture I've ever seen, where they actually say, hey, is there a, where we can figure out the exact miles per hour you have to go, where you compress a spring horizontally and it reads your weight. And I can take any weight. I could take an elephant, I could take a pea, and I could do the same experiment, moving at the same speed, and I could read its actual weight. Because technically that's what gravity is. It's a constant force and it's a consistent force. So that is physics, in my opinion, is having that information. And look, he doesn't care. He couldn't care less. Okay, I wanted to do, okay, the demo I wanted to do, just to prove Gary's MV does not give predictable results. So his whole ambition is just to contrive an experiment that gets a bad answer so he can say momentum doesn't work. He doesn't need to prove kinetic energy. He just needs to do an experiment where neither answer is viable. Because that way he can just say, see, the momentum thing didn't work. Well, it doesn't matter that the kinetic energy thing didn't work either. It doesn't matter that physicist Michael can do the math and figure out that it doesn't match. The numbers aren't consistent with the theory. Who cares? So you see his purpose. His purpose is just to propagandize. And it has nothing to do with doing science and gleaning information. Like I said, anybody who's going to bother doing this, look, if I had a better scale, okay, I'd bother. But this is my scale. Okay, it's just a cheap little cruddy scale. But I guess I could engineer it to do something. But why should it be done in this rickety way? Shouldn't we have these experiments done well? And shouldn't we have almost every data point? I mean, drop it from 1 centimeter, then drop it from 2 centimeters, and drop it from 3, and drop it from 4, and get some real information. But they don't do any of that. So it really sucks that this is exactly his ambition. Just to prove Gary MV doesn't give predictable results. Do you think we've proved that now beyond a reasonable doubt? So clearly there's good doubt to have about his measuring device, and the fact that he can't and won't, okay, show the experiment in more detail, just evidence of the fact that he's just there to do these fake experiments. Now let's remember, he got an experiment where he dropped a weight onto a clump of clay, plasticine, and the experiment was fairly simple, same kind of idea, just drop it, let it land on the clay, see what the clay does. And he got results perfectly consistent with my theory, with MV, and he wouldn't show those. So let's understand that that's how he functions, okay? If the results come out my way, you won't see the experiment. If they come out his way, you will see them, but you only see them in pieces and broken up. So again, when he went to the trouble to prove how his reader works, he didn't actually do the experiment under those conditions and demonstrate. So all he had to do was two things, right? All he had to do was drop the weight, he just had to take the light mass and drop it from 10 centimeters and take the heavy mass and drop it from the higher height, and then he would have completed the 4 little experiments he has to do to show consistency. And he didn't bother. I think he didn't bother because, yeah, the answers aren't the same as the first version of the experiment. So, but, so all these comments, and nobody really says anything about how, science should look a little better than this. You're going to be doing science, you ought to have a little better data than this. This is shit, frankly. And it is. Yeah, that's what it is. It's shitty. Now, I could mention also the quick release thing that he just doesn't bother with. But too much trouble. I mean, it's physics. It's just too much trouble to bother with doing it right rather than doing it sloppy. So anyway, so yeah, this is just a, we'll wait and see, okay, until somebody a little more credible does the experiment, let's say. All right, so I'll go find I think there's a couple of website comments I might as well dispose of. Well, I guess I'll show this first. So here's the debatephysics.com. So there's 9 videos now, all under 5 minutes. And if I can, I guess I'll suggest to physicist Michael that I would really, if I have to, I'll pay you to play these videos in a video, and then explain where I said something wrong in one of these videos, okay? And because it's really that simple. I mean, the arguments against the kinetic energy theory are numerous, and there are, I don't see how you argue against them, because really to argue against them you have to say there really isn't any such thing as conservation of momentum, that a physicist should never even talk about conservation of momentum because it's not a real thing at all. You really do have to violate it with every tool known to man for kinetic energy to be true. A true representation of reality. Alright, so now I'll go find the comments. Alright, so I think this is close enough. Yeah. Alright, so this was kind of funny. I guess somebody punched in some crap into one of these chat boxes, and it wrote a pretty good description. It says that the content seems to contain the author's arguments and theories about physics, particularly focused on the nature of energy, kinetic energy formula, the universe is running on energy, and the proposal of a new theory based on force bits. And it goes on to say, blah, blah, blah. And, it's pretty accurate. So I don't know what he put in to feed this. But it just is funny. These chatbots do write very well. I mean, they're well-constructed sentences. Anyway, so here's some ragged comment. You're such a loser for promoting Newtonian mechanics. Whatever. And not particle physics. So the joke is that Newton's mechanics is particle physics. Newton opposed Huygens, he opposed wave theories, blah, 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 blah. And particle physics isn't particle physics. Particle physics is wooey, wavy, sparky, vaporous bullshit. So, I mean, it's just a joke to call particle physics, because obviously it's not about particles, it's about wooicles. Be a nuclear physicist, not a plagiarizing Newtonian. So what did I plagiarize exactly? I mean, you're the ones who are saying Newton said things he didn't say, like F equals ma. So how am I plagiarizing Newtonian mechanics, in the sense that Newtonian mechanics is the basis of all physics? You can't evade the fact that Newton discovered truth. He discovered facts. And so everybody has to plagiarize Newton because everybody has to believe in the facts. Now, you can say there's some other facts, but I'm just saying nobody's debunked Newton. Nobody's shown where something he said was absolutely wrong. So till you do that, you're out of luck, fucker. Alright, Newton just plagiarized the pyramid. Oh, he's really, I didn't read all of this, so he really is a nut. What the fuck are you talking about? Nothing new, just a virgin. What? But really, this must be that fucking loop-de-doo, schizoid guy. But really, what is a perpetual propulsion device or unidentified aerial vehicle? What the fuck is he talking about? Move on to MC squared. Why would I bother? Why would I bother thinking velocity is dimensional when nothing has a velocity in more than one dimension? For fuck's sake, man. Yeah, well, that's not a very persuasive argument. I'll just give you a clue. Not persuasive. I'd put that in the, if you want to persuade somebody, that isn't the kind of comment you're right. Let's see, I have no clue why the previous said 90 DS arguments remove the 90. Yeah, okay, well, that's all sort of irrelevant. So let's see, I don't agree with your takedown of KE, but I agree that better experiments should be done. I would not hold out too much hope from physicist Michael. Well, he has a reputation to protect, frankly. I mean, he's sort of on the hook now. He is a teacher. His credibility is now, he's stuck in a quandary. I mean, he's in the rock hard place now. because if he weasels out and disappears, he's just shown he's a coward. And if he stays in the game, he's stuck, because he's going to have to, make arguments that just really aren't very sensible. His videos are just a copy of existing videos. Yes, I've already made that accusation to his face, so yes, nothing new. That's right. Look, he's going to do a lever experiment, so that's new, isn't it? A physicist who's actually taking a suggestion and saying, I'm going to do an experiment. So something that's not in my book. Okay, nothing original. So, your critique is a little bit harsh. Nothing worth watching. Well, to me, it'd be worth watching if he draws a lever, okay, and explains how it doesn't conserve momentum, or draws some gears and explains how they don't conserve momentum. That would be worth watching. He is a typical physics teacher soaked up in the Psalms by rote and now teaches others to recite them. Yes, it's a catechism or whatever. It's just a religion. There are plenty of YouTube videos that show a collision where Gary's misunderstanding of momentum gives the wrong answers for KE plus momentum. So you say so. I say none of those experiments are all that credible, frankly. And the very fact that they're all dependent on, creating delicately balanced and non-frictional experiments. So what we don't see is anybody using pendulums to do those experiments. I mean, their pendulums are so, it's right in your face. You can videotape them fairly well. So why don't you show one of those experiments where you get 3 times or twice, you get 1.33 the kinetic energy, or 1.5 or 2.0 the kinetic energy. You make free energy. Why don't you show me one of those done with a pendulum? With a Newton's cradle. So that's, after all my videos, that's a pretty lame, comment by you, frankly. Momentum gives the right answer for the collision result, says you. Let me quote, I showed Professor Lewin's fucking clay, with the clay smeared on the frickin' cart. Get real. Let me quote something you would agree with. If there's any scenario where it leaves with more KE, KE is done. Yeah, that's right. So I'm sorry, if you're making free energy, the theory's over, okay? So I'm saying you're not going to make free momentum, in reality, all right? It's just not going to happen. And that's what KE requires. So I'm just saying you're out of luck, okay? Momentum works without creating free energy. KE can't work without creating free energy. The whole concept is I put 100 in, I get 133 going out in a direction. The whole concept is got free energy written all over it. Likewise, the same reasoning. If there's any scenario where it leaves with more absolute value of momentum, Gary's idea that absolute value of momentum is conserved is done. That's right. So I'm saying, look, how many times do I have to point this out? We don't have any evidence of this experiment done with things that are just elastic. They have to be super elastic. So the theory says it should happen with elastic objects. There aren't any experiments without springs. So that's part of the argument right there. And clearly I'm not going to argue that springs make energy. So, the spring isn't going to be some source of extra energy. The experiments suck in the sense that there's all kinds of, you can get, whatever you want to prove, you can find a video that proves it. So if I want to prove you're wrong, I'll just show the high school teacher, who did the experiment not on purpose. She wasn't trying to force the results. She was just doing a demo of how the air track works. But she did do the experiment. And the results don't show any of this extra momentum. Guess what? There are video carts come out with more absolute value momentum. Isn't that saying the same thing? So he's repeating the same crap. But momentum is conserved. Well, that's a lie. It's only conserved if you think there's such a thing as negative momentum or unmomentum or anti-momentum. So if you don't believe in anti-momentum, it's certainly not conserved. So Gary's model is done, cooked. So cooked by air cart experiments and low friction experiments where springs are little plastic crappy springs, right? You're doing the experiment with. Come on. You think that cooks it, huh? Well, I think wrecking ball cooks your theory. I think professional bowlers cook your theory. I think probably most people who shoot arrows or shoot guns know your theory is shit. Alright. This is nowhere comparable to soaking up the Psalms by root and now teaching others to recite them. I don't know. You really have quoting yourself now? Especially given that he didn't even back out of doing any experiments, at least so far. I don't know what you're talking about, but moreover, if you listen with an unbiased mind, you would actually understand his points. Whose points, you fucking idiot? Who are you talking about? And that they do address at least 90 DS arguments, so they address at least DS's arguments, such as the fact that he pointed out a weak link, a flaw in DS's logic. So who the fuck are you talking about? Let's see. I guess he's talking about physicist Michael. He didn't make any arguments pointing out any. Frankly, every response was on non-responsive. So that's an amazing statement, frankly. A weak link, a flaw in the logic about the lever argument. What's the flaw? His argument is that somehow the technically lighter mass somehow causes the fulcrum to piss its pants and lose the energy. How does the fulcrum do that? When the fulcrum is just seeing a weight, and it's seeing the exact same weight. So how does the fulcrum know, hey, they're fooling me, it's only a half mass, it's not a full mass. I will now wet my pants and lose all the energy, even though it's the same weight. I mean, you're saying that's a good argument? Then you're pretty fucking stupid. He is even intended to do the lever experiment. Yeah. so again, and what is this? Pleading DS to explain to him? Why should I have to explain to a physicist how to do an experiment? That's kind of funny. The specifications, which DS strawmans as he doesn't want criticism. No, he overtly said you have to accept my experimental results. So if we don't figure out every variable ahead of time, you can't criticize the experiment because you had an opportunity to figure out ahead of time I was going to do it in some stupid way. He wants carte blanche. He wants somebody to say, even though you haven't done the experiment yet, I completely agree with the results. And there's no criticism. You couldn't have done anything wrong. I mean, what a pile of shit that is. The experiment will speak for itself, but I'm not going to pre-speak for it. I'm not going to ahead of time say, oh yes, it sounds like you're doing the right experiment, and then you do something stupid, like decide to take a shit right on the experiment. I mean, literally. And then I have to accept the results because, well, we didn't talk about not shitting on it. Yeah, I guess I should have told you, yes, don't take a shit on the experiment. That's not a good idea. It won't make the experiment work better. So ahead of time, I have to tell him not to take a shit on it. I have to figure out every way he could fuck it up, and I have to tell him not to fuck it up with one of those stupid things. I mean, you're such a shithead. God damn, call that a straw man. What a pile of shit. Who goes into the experiment saying you have to accept my results? I mean, what the kind of bullshit is that? Alright, what a fucking repugnant straw man. Fuck you. Okay, anyone paying attention should utterly disgusted by this shit. No, the shit of him saying, well, you have to accept my results as being perfect, even though you haven't seen me do the experiment perfectly yet. So we're supposed to assume that he's going to do a perfect experiment. We have to agree that he is going to do a perfect experiment ahead of time. We have to agree it's a perfect, unchallengeable experiment ahead of time. Bullshit. Literally, what else do you want? Again, I'm not complaining. I'm saying, yes, do the experiment. I'm just not going to agree ahead of time to saying it was perfect and nobody could ever criticize it. I'm not going to do that because I haven't seen him do it yet. I mean, you can't figure that out, that I shouldn't agree until I've seen it? Oh, man. You're just, what a despicable piece of shit you are. Alright, let's see. So this is the same guy, I guess, but he's going to say the same bullshit. I don't agree with your takedown of KE, but I agree that better, so he's the same damn shit. I would not hold out too much hope, so he says the same fucking shit. Let's see, his videos are just a copy, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, why, you know. So you're too stupid to realize you already typed that crap. And then you typed the same crap again. Oh, thank you. Alright, why do you keep repeating that Leibniz was a religious kook? You realize Newton was a religious kook too, right? Yes, okay, but let's just recognize that Leibniz and Newton were completely different in the sense that Newton wasn't trying to force physics to agree with the Bible, where Leibniz was deliberately trying to force the physics to match his vision of God, which wasn't the Bible, frankly. Okay. So anyway, in response to your latest, we already did this shit. It's not okay. So why is acceleration due to gravity equal to 9 meters per second squared? Because it's an acceleration, meters per second per second. So he just does the per second shit. Like somebody should think that's a rational reason to believe, is because you merely say it. So if I said per second, you know, I could make a whole new physics, or per second, and you know, then we can have a whole new physics. I just say per second, and somehow I can just start squaring all kinds of shit. Too silly. Alright, so I think that's probably it. I don't think there's any comments anywhere else that are worth troubling myself over, let alone you, but I'll go look. Alright, so we'll just finish up. So there are these 9 videos, probably will be 10 or 11. I got a couple more things I think they're worth arguing. So far not a single comment on any of the videos, and apparently, you know, even though they're 5 minutes and somebody should be able to tackle the arguments, you know, they're just no one's done anything so far. Some of these arguments I've been making for 2 years, just saying, please, somebody explain where I said something wrong in this video. So I'm going to explain a lever or a gear. Or I talk about 9.8 meters per 1 second. All of these videos, and not a single coherent, respectful, rational, in any way response to any of those arguments. So all of them ignored by the cowards, frankly. That's because it's really not that big a challenge, right? I mean, taking on a 5-minute video, come on, you can do it, Piro. Anyway, so we'll see. Again, I can only do my half of this thing called an argument. You know, and I've made my arguments. I'm placing them there right in front of you and saying, okay, go ahead, explain how I said something or thought something wrong. Explain the defect in the logic presented. And they won't do it. Instead, they just do this chicanery of, you know, we'll do experiments badly, get bad numbers, and then pretend we prove something. It's the same physics, frankly, okay, that got this stupid thing off the ground. This is just right back to the clay experiments. You think even the believers would have said something to, like, Madame Charlotte. Well, what if you drop something that's not round? What happens then? Yeah, because if you don't drop round things into the clay, you get completely different numbers. Yeah, the whole universe changes. It's all run by something completely different. I mean, that should be a giveaway that this is really weak physics. This is really bad science. Alright, so till the next time and such.